Hello, hi, welcome to our live stream video, The Astrology of a Global Crisis. This is my first live streaming video here on YouTube. I'm not sure how many people are tuning in, but if you're out there, um, say hello. All right, so as you guys know, we've been putting out a lot of BTC astrology, a lot of Bitcoin astrology. Not too much of the Bitcoin tonight. I'm just mainly going to be focusing on the astrology, the current state of astrological events and alignments that's going on right now. And I want to bring people up to date on the astrology of this coronavirus pandemic crisis. And then we're going to record this video. We'll post it up on our YouTube channel. This coming week. Astrological situation. The main things that we're looking at tonight is going to be when is this lockdown over? When does the pandemic crisis kind of ease up? And moving forward into the future, what can we expect? And we're going to go over some of the concerning alignments just looking at the next month or two, but also looking long term at the rest of 2020. And also into 2021 as well. So if you guys have been following my reports and also my Twitter feed, you know that I actually have been predicting that there was going to be a major crisis in 2020. We didn't know exactly how it was going to play out. I posted on my Twitter feed that a series of posts from August 2019 where I did specifically say to expect a recession and a global economic crisis, potentially political crisis, or I actually thought there was going to be a major war when I looked at the astrology from this time period. And it turns out that it is actually a war, but it's a war against the virus. It's a global fight to stop the coronavirus. So it's kind of interesting to see, how it's been playing out. Just to bring you guys up to speed, the main, alignment that astrologers were talking about and were concerned about for 2020 was what we call the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, and that's about a 35 to 40-year cycle. The last conjunction was 1982. There was a major recession in the United States, and the last Saturn-Pluto event, major hard aspect event, was actually the opposition of Saturn and Pluto. And that was in 2011. That was actually in August 2011. So just a few weeks after that alignment, we got the events of 9/11, of course, which were world-changing events as well. So the main alignment right now that is kind of the crux of the issue is the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Okay, that's the first thing we have to understand. And that was actually exact on January 12th, 2020, which is interesting because that's right around the time that the coronavirus epidemic was really breaking out in Wuhan in China. And, a lot of us weren't really taking it that seriously yet because we didn't really know what was going on over there. But it's just kind of interesting. I told a lot of people there was a risk window. There was a major eclipse right around Christmas Day, and Jupiter was combust and conjoined the South Node. I told people there was a risk window between December 20th and January 20th for a major period of time. But of course, the stock markets continued to make all-time highs through February. And, none of us were really, a lot of us, weren't sort of taking this too seriously. I mean, I was looking at it. I certainly didn't think it was going to shut down the entire planet. So even though I was forecasting a crisis as early as last year, I didn't think it would be this bad. So it's kind of interesting to see how it's played out. Now, just to give you a little bit of historical background, actually, let me just, I'm gonna put out a tweet here just to let people know that we're doing the live stream video right now. So just give me one second here. And we'll give you some of that historical background. All right. Okay, guys. So yeah, going back to the history of the Saturn-Pluto alignment, we go back. If we go back about 100 years, I mean, we could go back for centuries, but if we go back about 100 years to, oh, people are tuned into a different link. She says there's like 18 waiting on another link. Oh shit. Okay. Okay. Shit. How do I get to that link? Okay, man, we're having some technical problems here. Man, I started broadcasting live, but I must be, that's weird. Interesting. Can you, okay. I posted this one on the other chat window. Oh, okay. Thanks. Thanks. I must have fucked up. I'm not sure how I did that, but I thought I was, but this is the first time I've ever done that. So, this is the first time I've ever done this. So of course, man, this video tech is pretty, it's pretty fucking challenging. Okay. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Okay. All right. Yeah, cool, guys. I can see some people are joining in here. Not sure what went wrong with that wrong link, but if people can just keep posting on the other chat window. Lori, thank you for doing that. All right, I can see we got 13 people coming in here. So, cool. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And I'm just gonna wait for a couple more people to come over from the other video link. All right, we got 14 people joining in now. This is great. Hey, Laura, if you can post the correct link on Twitter on one of my Twitter comment boxes on one of the links that I posted to, maybe that would be helpful too. So welcome to our live stream video. I'm Cryptodamus. Some of you guys know me from my other video tutorials and Bitcoin report videos. And welcome to the Astrology of a Global Crisis video live stream. We're going to be talking about the astrology that's going on right now. And we're in a period of really historic, epic astrology alignments. We haven't seen alignments like this in our lifetime. In fact, we haven't seen alignments like this in centuries, really. And as I was saying, the main crux of the alignment is the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, right? And geopolitical shifts throughout the centuries. And this was in January, 12th, 2020. And I was posting about this, in my reports and also on Twitter as far back as early last year, and warning people there was going to be a major global crisis in 2020. I thought it was going to be a war, maybe a financial crisis, maybe a political crisis related to the impeachment. I personally did not predict it would be a global pandemic, and I didn't think it would be so severe that it would shut the entire planet down. But here we are in the middle of this crisis. So kind of interesting to see how it's playing out. I was saying, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, if we go back 100 years, 1914 was a Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Of course, that was the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand and the beginning of World War I. So that was a really dramatic Saturn-Pluto event. That was followed by the main alignments that we look at for major global crisis is the conjunction, followed by the opposition, right, which is the 180-degree angle. So you can kind of think of that in terms of the relationship between Saturn and Pluto as the new moon versus the full moon. The opposition of Pluto was 1931. And that was a year that there was a major run on the banks in the United States. That was the 1931. So Then the following Saturn-Pluto conjunction was 1947. So interestingly, the conjunction between 1914 and 1947 encompassed both world wars and the geopolitical alliance of the US, the UK, and France against Germany, and of course Japan in the Second World War. And 1947 was a big geopolitical shift, right? That was the end of World War II. That was the Marshall Plan. That was the siege of Berlin by the Soviet Union, leading to the Cold War and what was called the Berlin Airlift, where the Western Allies actually had to lift in supplies to West Berlin. And that most historians agree that that was really the beginning of the Cold War. So 1947, you have that conjunction of Saturn and Pluto again. Europe laid in ruins, you know, the world economy was kind of in shambles, but it was a new beginning point. The opposition, the next opposition was 1965. 1965 was, of course, the height of the Cold War. The Vietnam War, that was the year, I believe that was the year of the Gulf of Tonkin, and President Johnson really escalated the war in Vietnam. There was the height of the civil rights movement. I believe the Voting Rights Act was passed in the United States. So that was a major year of necessary restructuring and reform, but it was also a global political crisis around the Vietnam War, Saturn-Pluto conjunction of 1982. And that was really the Reagan kind of Thatcher years. Excuse me. 1982, there was a massive recession in the United States. It was one of the worst economic crises, you know, of the 20th century for the United States. There was double-digit inflation and double-digit unemployment, which was a combination that nobody had ever seen before. It was called, they called it stagflation. And that was actually started under Carter, but it even got worse after Reagan was elected. And Brezhnev died, and it was kind of the beginning of the end of the Cold War there, although it took a few more years for that to kind of come down right in 1989. But 1982, right around 1982, 83 was the death of Brezhnev, and that was really the beginning of the end of the Soviet Union. So, and a couple other important things happened, which was the bombing of the Marine barracks, the U.S. Marines in Lebanon. Over 200 Marines were killed. It was the biggest attack on the Marines since Iwo Jima. And that was the first, you know, really deepening of U.S. involvement in the Middle East and the first really major suicide bombing. Now, why do I bring that up? Because the next Saturn-Pluto opposition was in 2001. And that, of course, was correlated with the events of 9/11. The Saturn-Pluto opposition was in mid-August, just a few weeks before the events of 9/11, which was, of course, a major global, you know, that was the last major global crisis of this type of proportion, where it was just like within the course of a few weeks, the whole global political and economic situation was different. So that was the last Saturn-Pluto hard aspect, and that brings us to January 2020, where we had the Saturn-Pluto conjunction again. And of course, we had that little skirmish with Iran, the assassination of General Soleimani. And I personally thought, oh, for sure, this is going to lead to a major war with Iran, looking at the astrology for March. And it turned out that was a total fake out. The actual crisis was, as we now know, the coronavirus pandemic. Now, what's going on right now is that we're not just talking about the conjunction of Saturn and Pluto. And it's, you know, we need to talk a little bit about, we talked about historically these crisis points, right? But what is the astrological symbolism of Saturn and Pluto, right? Saturn represents, I mean, a lot of things. It represents hardship and adversity, difficulties and struggle. It also can represent success, hard work, discipline, and focus. But it also represents stability and societal structures that we take for granted. Excuse me. Right, the structures, economic, social, cultural, political, and financial structures are represented by Saturn. Pluto is not, I mean, Pluto is an archetypal, you know, it's an archetypal theme, but it's also like a process. Pluto represents this process represented by Saturn in each case of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction or oppositions have been broken down, and it's a societal global reset, financial and economic crises, breakdowns of market structure, breakdowns of financial and political institutions, breakdowns of geopolitical alignments, and all sorts of shifts take place as society goes through this destruction period, death, and so that it can be reborn and regenerated and come to a higher level of evolution and consciousness. So right now we're really stuck in the breakdown, right? The breakdown of our societal structures. We're all hoping that our healthcare systems don't collapse under the pressure of this. So that's really, the themes of the Saturn-Pluto. It's that breakdown and destruction of, it's a necessary, right? We have to understand that this is a necessary cycle, right, of death and rebirth and regeneration. So it's not necessarily all bad, although we all may be affected by this in negative ways. We all may be suffering, either hopefully transformed and regenerated ultimately in a better way, right? What about all the trillions of dollars we've wasted, on bombs and guns and defense, whereas we let our public health and our healthcare system deteriorate. So hopefully we can have, these kind of more regeneration of our healthcare system, of our public health situation. And society is going to go through so many transformations, over the next couple of years as a result of this pandemic. So right now, that brings us to March, right, where we are right now. And one of the things that makes this Saturn-Pluto so interesting is that it's right now what we're dealing with is a conjunction of 4 planets. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto are all together in the last degrees of Capricorn and the 0 degree of Aquarius. And that's a really historic alignment that I was talking about earlier in the broadcast here, where we haven't seen this for centuries. We haven't seen these 4 planets all line up at the very end of Capricorn like this before. And as we can see, this is a historical crisis that we're dealing with. So the Saturn-Pluto conjunction is kind of an ongoing theme for the year. And the thing that's coming up in the next couple of days actually is that Mars is going to conjunct Saturn. And that's kind of, so you have to understand that's like a smaller aspect that's within the crisis alignment of Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto. So Mars is coming in. Mars is already conjuncted Jupiter. Mars is going to conjunct Saturn. And that happens about every 2 to 2.5 years. I mean, it's usually one of the most unfavorable aspects of the year. It's not a historically, epically bad alignment, but as it falls as part of, Mars, first of all, does represent infectious disease, but Mars also represents, kind of like getting our needs met, formulating our strategies. It represents confidence. It represents going out into the world and getting shit done. It's like a speeding train. Mars is always pushing ahead to get our needs met, right? And Saturn is basically essentially like an immovable mountain. So when the Mars and Saturn conjunction happens, it's a resetting of the Mars-Saturn cycle, and basically a train wreck, okay? Because you get a speeding train slamming into an immovable mountain, so you're going to get a disaster. And that's what's happening right now. And I think this is going to really coincide to pretty much the entire planet shutting down. And the theme for this is just everybody feeling thwarted, stuck, and blocked. Again, Saturn is challenges and adversity. Mars is an excess of negative and unfavorable energy. So that happens on March 31st. We're looking at that aspect. And again, that's one of the aspects we're looking at as to sort of trying to find, a peak for this crisis. Some other things we're looking at is Mercury in Pisces is going to make a conjunction to Neptune on April 3rd, and that's also going to, probably be, Neptune is information, travel, and logistics, and Neptune is confusion, delusions, and illusion. And this aspect can be good for intuition and psychic abilities, but it's terribly confusing for logical, linear, rational analysis for technology, communication, and so forth. So I expect there to be a lot of confusion and difficulty in this period of the Mars-Saturn conjunction on March 31st, the Mercury conjunction to Neptune on April 3rd, and then we've also got some interesting aspects on April 4th. We've got Venus is trine Saturn, which is a positive, favorable aspect that could kind of soften things a little bit. And we've got Jupiter conjunct Pluto, which is a big part of that 3-planet alignment. This is all on April 4th. Jupiter-Pluto could be positive because Jupiter is abundance. This is the other thing I wanted to say about this, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction with the addition of Jupiter. Jupiter we often think of in astrology as good fortune, abundance, prosperity, and so forth. Like that, a lot of people think of, I hope everybody was able to find the right link here. Yo, City Kid, what's up, bro? Good to see you, man. So people think of Jupiter as a really positive planet of abundance, good fortune, wealth. It's a wealth planet. It's a good luck. And Jupiter can actually blow a problem up and make it much bigger and blow everything kind of out of the norm. Pluto, that's once in a 12 to 15-year cycle. So the Saturn-Pluto cycle, which is a 35-year cycle is resetting. The Jupiter-Pluto cycle, which is a 15-year cycle, is resetting now on April 4th. And that could be good in terms of Pluto represents that regeneration and rebirth and evolution. So Jupiter-Pluto could be positive for that. But it could also be, I'm afraid that it could also be a draconian crackdown, governments taking all sorts of unnecessary powers to stop the virus. I mean, they may be cracking down with very draconian powers necessary to stop the virus, as we're seeing across the world, especially with it. See also an authoritarian power grab here, so that's very concerning. Then the next thing is on April 7th, we've got the full moon, and Mars is going to square Uranus, which is very dramatic and somewhat unfavorable. We can expect some really dramatic, unpredictable events to happen on that day. The full moon here on April 7th, now that could also be a time where there's an energy peak in the cycle of this crisis. So that's something that we're really looking at here too. There's also some favorable astrology on that full moon, on the full moon day. We've got Mercury is sextiling the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, and that could be very favorable for some good news coming out and some favorable events related to the pandemic crisis. Mercury, which again has to do with communication, travel, technology. Now in late April, from April 25th through April 28th, that's going to form some squares to Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn. And then on April 30th, it's going to conjunct Uranus. So that also could be a really challenging time with those kind of really difficult Mercury aspects. There could be a lot of communication and travel breakdowns and travel bans during that period of time. The good news is that Mars is kind of after that aspect on April 7th of the square to Uranus. Mars is going to move into Aquarius, deeper into Aquarius, and it's going to kind of move away from this alignment. I think as we move into the crisis will be over, but I think that things really start to improve in terms of the pandemic itself, in terms of the number of business closures. Perhaps some of these things can ease up as this alignment, kind of starts to break up a little bit, again, as we go into late April and May. But in May, what's really worrisome is that we have a very unusual alignment of whatever ever seeing that before. Jupiter and Venus, the both money and wealth planets, going retrograde at the same time within 2 days of each other in mid-May. Coincidentally, I will say that this coincides with the halving of Bitcoin. So that's something we're looking at as well, and I wrote about in my report. If you're not a subscriber to our Bitcoin report, we just sent out our April report today. So this is a really unusual, as many of you might know, the kind of Mercury retrograde right now. Mercury retrograde is a period where things go haywire, having to do with communication, technology, and travel. Technological communication like email and cell phones, but also like interpersonal communication breakdowns too. Um, so the things that are ruled by Venus are love and money and finances, and the things that are ruled by Jupiter are also prosperity and wealth and abundance. The fact that these are both going retrograde at the same time is quite concerning, and it indicates, it's really hard to say exactly how it's going to manifest, but I think, some of the unemployment data, some of the GDP data, some of these global financial markets, including Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is going to be okay generally up until the halving, but I'm kind of worried about what's going to happen with Bitcoin after the halving. And I don't think it looks that great, especially we have some extremely unfavorable aspects in July. So anyway, just throwing out a little bit of information about the Bitcoin there. So yeah, going back to the double retrograde period, especially the retrograde square of Venus to Neptune on May 20th. And then we've got a square between Mars and Venus retrograde on June 2nd. So that's a pretty unfavorable period. I'd be looking to maybe short financial markets and indexes right around that time of between May 12th and May 14th. That could be, it's possible this whole $2 trillion stimulus package and all this Fed, QE and all this stuff that they're going to do could maybe give a short-term bounce to the financial markets between now and May. I mean, we'll have to see, but certainly in May, things are not really looking, that good. With that double retrograde, especially with the square to Neptune and a square to Mars of retrograde Venus. I just have a feeling that global financial markets are going to really get carnage destroyed during that period of time. So I don't personally think it's a really good time to start buying stocks yet. I think this crisis is going to go on for a really long time, and the markets, are a ways away from bottoming out. In 2008, it took over a year for markets to bottom, and overall there was a 50% retrace. So far, we're right around a 25 to 30% retrace, and I think things are going to get a lot worse. But I do think this stimulus package in the short term is going to cushion things for a while, a few weeks, maybe into May. Let me just check here. I've got a couple of questions from you guys. What are your thoughts on the conjunction tomorrow as unfavorable for Bitcoin? Okay, yeah. Pause for 15 seconds. It will be smooth with some delay. Okay, I guess there's a few technical issues out there. Yeah, this isn't specifically a Bitcoin talk. We'll see what we're going to do with that one, but I think that's going to be for Patreon. That's for our Patreon group. We did just put out our detailed report today, our April report, and we do think that it could be a sharp, pullback in Bitcoin over the weekend. But in general, I'm generally kind of bullish. I know it just dumped a few $100 while I was waiting to set this up, but we're sort of bullish because we've got this Uranus trine aspect through April 8th, 9th, and 10th. I think we're generally bullish through April 9th and 10th. But definitely check the report. Retrograde Venus is also going to be combusting the sun in this period too, between right around May 27th through June 9th. So this is a really unfavorable period. Look for the financials with Venus retrograde and combust. Then, the astrology kind of eases up for a while. I mean, there's no major crisis aspects actually, kind of until we get into August. And I think this kind of leads me to believe that, as a lot of scientists are predicting, right, that this pandemic is going to get better with the warmer weather, and we might be able to ease up some of these massive societal restrictions. The astrology sort of tends to support this going into the summer in June and July, The financial situation, of course, it doesn't look like it's going to improve, but I think the overall situation we'll have to see. I mean, some experts are saying we're going to have to continue social distancing for many months, right? What's really worrisome then is what happens is that starting in August, we start to get a series of squares from Mars. So right now, Mars is conjunct. Mars is making a conjunction to Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn right now. Like that goes up until March 31st, as we said. And then Mars kind of, it makes that square to Uranus on April 7th, and then it kind of dissipates out of the alignment for a while, which is a good thing. But coming in August, we start to see a series of squares from Mars in Aries to Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto again. And that's very concerning. And what's even more concerning is that Mars is going to go retrograde, okay, in early September and make a series of retrograde squares, in September and October to Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn, to the major crisis point again. So I think that this indicates we might be seeing a wave 2 of the pandemic in September and October. It's certainly very concerning. And we can't say for sure that the pandemic crisis returns again. So that's something that we have to keep in mind. And even if it's not, the pandemic crisis, that's also it's just a generally super unfavorable alignment. Of course, that's right around the time of the US presidential election as well. So long-term situation, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good going into the fall, okay? And then we have another crisis point conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. So we have the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction of December 2020 at 0 degrees Aquarius. This is on about a 19 to 20-year cycle. And this is also really unfavorable. As we've said already in this broadcast, the Saturn symbolism is limitations, challenges, adversities, contraction, fear. And Jupiter is abundance, prosperity, and good fortune and good luck. And so Saturn is really going to be limiting the possibilities for abundance and prosperity and good and wealth. As a society, this is a major societal reset. Now, so I don't really see, major stock markets and housing markets and cryptocurrency markets recovering, even going into December of 2020, because we've got that. And then we go into January and February, and we have another alignment, which is a series in 2021 of the Saturn position of Saturn and Uranus that correlated with the 2008 financial crisis. So I think that we've got quite a bit of challenging aspects going all the way into 2021. So that's the bad news. The good news is that this does provide an opportunity to buy certain assets at, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity for stocks and potentially for real estate as well. I'd say over the next, really 6 to 12 months. I don't think people really need to be like, oh man, I got to swoop in and buy some, Apple and Amazon stock right now while things are low. I just don't really see that that's how the time. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a little nibbling here or there, but one of the things that I'd personally like to do is if possible, if I survive financially myself, I'd like to get in on some real estate at this time, because I think the real estate markets, it's going to take a lot longer for this to filter out. So that's kind of what I have for you guys right now. That's kind of a little bit of the granular view of what's happening right now, and also like looking ahead into 2021. I think for Bitcoin, I'll just say a little bit about Bitcoin. I think, like I said, I'm bullish through April 9th and 10th. I think there's a possibility for some continued. I think we see some correction in mid-April, but overall, there's a possibility for, continuing to rally into the halving into May. In mid-May, then I'm very bearish across the board on everything. And for Bitcoin, we have some really catastrophic astrology in July. So I can say almost 95% certain that Bitcoin is going to get really, there's going to be a massive sell-off in June and July for Bitcoin. So we definitely want downs, and there'll be shorter-term favorables and unfavorables that we could try to play. But in terms of the next really major Bitcoin rally after this halving one, the aspects I'm not seeing it in the aspect picture until about May and June. So that's kind of the big overview of the current astrological situation. I think that, yeah, we could, I think we're going to get pro, which I posted, and also gold. I took a long on gold, which did well. I did well on both of those, and I've been taking profits all week. I still haven't totally closed out. I'm still long Bitcoin right now. I'm leaving a lot more cash on the side than I usually would. You have to understand that these are really, really extreme market conditions. These are not normal market conditions. This is a crisis market condition. So you got to be really careful trading out there, whether it's stocks or commodities or cryptocurrencies. But if you can trade this type of markets, then you're going to be on normal market conditions, right? It's like the famous saying goes, smooth waters don't make for great sailors. So this is a really time you want to be using your stop losses and risk management techniques, and leaving a lot of cash on the side, and always asking yourself, what if I'm wrong? Cash is king in a crisis. Cash is king. So make sure you have enough liquidity. You don't want to be strapped. You don't want to be taking unnecessary risks right now and end up not having enough cash to cover your basic expenses if you don't know how long you're going to be in lockdown and your business might be closed and so forth. But I am looking to short the major indexes again, and especially in May, I'm going to reevaluate where things are at. But that looks like a possible short opportunity at that time. We'll have to look at the technical analysis and the fundamental analysis on the major indices, going into May. But that double retrograde of Venus and Jupiter looks like a short opportunity across the board for almost every major financial market. Okay, folks, I'm going to open it up to a couple of questions. If anybody has some questions right now, I'll take them one at a time. I'm gonna continue this for another 10 or 15 minutes here with seeing if anybody has any questions. Okay, and yeah, if you have any questions just about the general astrology, specific to Bitcoin. Let's see, okay, sorry, joined late. Did you talk about when the virus is going to end? Yeah, you're going to have to go back and watch the video. We're going to post the video up on YouTube. So I don't have an exact date for when it's going to end. What I said was that I think that this current wave ends sometime in late April and May, and things start to get a lot better as we go into the warmer summer months, like a lot of epidemiologists and doctors are saying. But I'm extremely worried for a massive wave 2 on the Mars retrograde alignments in September and October. An exact end date for it. I think right now I'm seeing that things do get better in May, June, especially May, June, and July, and then they get worse again, potentially high probability. We can't be 100% certain, but certainly September, October, and November are quite worrisome. Okay, Happiest Camper is asking if the increase in Bitcoin till April 8th is the last hurrah for the year. It's the really last clear aspect that we have into May that could possibly indicate another rally peak in early May, and I wrote about that in the report. So May 1st through the 5th, I think that would be potentially what you said, the last hurrah. After that, I definitely think I'm going to be in the double retrograde of Venus and Jupiter at that time. Do you think the stock market goes down after April 10th? I'm not sure what the significance of April 10th specifically is. Like I said, I think I think we could see a short-term rebound bounce on this $2 trillion stimulus over the next couple of weeks. I mean, I'm not really sure. I'm just taking it 1 week at a time. What I specifically says is I think that all global financial markets look very bad, especially in mid-May and into June. Can you explain how you're arriving at your 10K target for Bitcoin for April or May? I've already posted that on Twitter and in the Bitcoin report. And I actually said 8.5 to 10K if the ascending channel that we were in continues up through April 9th and 10th. Then, I mean, that's just a guess, really, if that ascending channel basically continues. I mean, I have to look at the chart. You know, that dump just happened right before until April 7th to the 9th. That would put us between 8.5 and 10K. Are you seeing the virus coming back in the future, saying in the next 5 to 10 years from now? I have no idea. I actually have no idea. I don't know what the end game is for this. That's just completely out of the realm of my expertise. I mean, I think they're saying that if half the population can develop immunity by recovering from the virus and the other half can get a vaccine, then you know, the coronavirus will no longer be a major problem unless it significantly mutates again. But that's just from reading the newspapers. I don't have any specific astrological data about that. Do you expect the crisis to end in 2021 or later? To be honest, I haven't really examined the aspects too closely past 2021. That's a great question. I think that, you know, the Saturn-Pluto is Saturn-Pluto was a historical crisis point that we know is reliable. The Uranus-Saturn squares are also crisis points. We had that major crisis in 2008 was the Great Recession. That was a Uranus-Saturn opposition. So those are the main, you know, aspects that we're seeing right now in 2020 and 2021. I think this is really a 1 to 2 year crisis where, you know, and the important thing to remember is also, like, you know, a hurricane affecting a huge portion of the United States. We could get a tsunami. We could get massive wildfires again, like we've had on the US West Coast before. You know, the world isn't going to stop because we're having a pandemic. So imagine if there's another crisis that happens on top of this as well. And that's something that we really have to consider as a possibility. So, I mean, I really think that we have you know, what I was saying last fall, if you were reading my reports, was that we have a 24-month, you know, crisis period. And I think that's going to be our period of the next, from where we are now over the next 18 months to really, you know, be able to get assets, you know, at all-time, or not all-time lows, but really at a low point in the historical cycles. So I do expect the crisis to play out and come to an end at least by the end of 2021. Will there be another crypto bubble between 2021 and 2025? Again, I don't really know. I think there are some favorable aspects in 2021 going into 2022. With Uranus is going to make two, maybe three very favorable aspects. It's going to trine and sextile Bitcoin Pluto, a favorable sextile to Bitcoin Pluto at the same time that Uranus is going to trine the Bitcoin Sun, long-term rally of up to 8 to 10 weeks. So that's a ways out there, but at least there's something on the horizon that looks, the halving is going to drive some type of a rally, but in general, just we're heading into a major economic recession, possibly a global recession. So, you know, I just think expectations have to be really low for cryptocurrencies. I haven't really started to figure out when they start to recover. I think that the markets continue down, you know, for another 12 months. I don't think that we're going to have, you know, any type of quick recovery here, given that we don't know how long these draconian measures are going to last. We don't know if there's economy is affected throughout 2020 and possibly into 2021. We could start to maybe talk about a recovery, after 2021, but I'm not really making sweeping generalizations out that far in advance. I'm really just talking about what's going on right now. Again, subscribe to my reports, and we update every month the situation and the long-term analysis. And also, just as much as possible. And again, like we said, we were warning people. I actually gave 2 lectures last year warning people about the coming. For people, with so much uncertainty right now, we can really tell you a lot more about how this is affecting you personally, your personal financial outlook, your personal career, relationships and financial situation through looking at your chart. Where do these alignments fall in your astrology chart? A lot of people have been asking me, I'm actually booked up through next week, but I'd be really happy to do readings for any of you guys. Just contact me on Twitter or the email astrocryptoreport@gmail.com, and we can set up, a personal consult for you. And we can really get super specific about how this is affecting you personally through a personal private astrological consultation. I also want to promote my new astrology program. If people really want to understand, what I'm talking about, I know a lot of it's kind of technical and complex. If you want to deepen your understanding of our Astro TA system, our financial astrology system, or just learn about astrology in general, check out our full educational program. We've got a 5 PDF series, tutorial series, and we've got a 4 video tutorial series as well. And those are available, on the online store that I'm posting on Twitter about all the time. We've got 2 of the 4 videos are recorded, and we're going to record the next 2 astrology tutorial videos over the next couple weeks. So, and also I'm available, if you've completed the PDF series or the video tutorials, I'm available for private astrological tutorials to go over all the material with you. So I'm a resource for you guys for learning astrology. It's a super helpful. I mean, you can see how accurate our Astro TA modeling has been for Bitcoin. Imagine, and for some of the other financial markets like gold, we've been doing really well on as well. And it's also just great for self-knowledge and self-understanding, and for understanding others and for understanding, the times that we live in. So really want to encourage people to deepen your knowledge of astrology and to study astrology and check out our educational program. Just going to check out a few more questions here. Does your $10 Patreon include charts weekly for stock indexes? It sometimes does. I mean, when I see opportunities, I post them. As you guys know, I'm really a Bitcoin expert, right? That's my main thing that I focus on. And I've had a really good track record on Bitcoin. We called the peak in February. If you guys have been following, we told you there was going to be a sell-off in March. We didn't know it was going to be a really dramatic 50% sell-off. Over the last really 18 months. Of course, we're not perfect. We don't get every call right. But I am mainly focused on Bitcoin, and that allows me to have a higher degree of accuracy. If I see, I do post about gold. I saw an opportunity on gold last week. It was at a historical oversold readings on the daily, on the daily chart. And I told people to buy U gold. And it's up, we're up 39% this week on U gold. So that was a really good, that's a 3x leveraged long on gold in a 1 week, 40%. Jupiter and Pluto and Mars, we had a feeling that the stimulus package was going to cushion the markets, and it did. So again, the Patreon, when I see opportunities, I post them. I'm not really studying the stock indexes as regularly as I am for Bitcoin, but when I see opportunities, and I'm definitely going to be, I've been waiting for this, opportunity to start buying stocks again. I sold all my stocks in 2019. I did really well in stocks from about 2011 through 2019. I got a 500 to 1,000% returns on NVIDIA. I got 100% returns on Netflix. On Tesla. I got 100% returns on several other stocks. And so I did really well in the stock market. And I'm going to be definitely looking at stocks again, individual stocks over the next 12 months once I think the market's bottomed. But right now I'm just playing like leveraged longs and shorts on the indexes for maximum short-term benefits. Let's see, if the stock market goes down after July, is early May the good time to start long gold? That was a question. That's really hard to say. Gold, I mean, gold got killed a little bit there, and luckily I had stop losses at entries. I got stopped out twice on gold at break even. I also took profits on gold rallies twice as well. So I did make quite a bit of money on trading gold, and I got those protective stops in when we were up. That's really the key, is to guessing the direction correctly and then getting those stop losses set. I think, I mean, if it's anything like 2008, gold and silver should continue to do well, but they've been, kind of erratic because there's been a really dramatic liquidity crunch, and traders were facing margin calls and they were selling off assets across the board, including Bitcoin and gold. So I don't really know. Just, yeah, follow on Twitter and Patreon. I'll be posting stuff about gold when I see opportunities, and it really, I mean, just, it's not that complicated. You really just need to look at confluence on the MACD, RSI, and stochastic on the daily and the 4-hour and the weekly, and just look for those opportunities. I mean, gold had a historic oversold reading, last week, or I forget exactly when it was. That's the time where you want to swoop in and buy some. There's always going to be some risk involved, but I mean, I'm still long gold right now. I've been selling off this rally. I don't know when it's going to be a good time to long gold. In the middle of last year, and that's, I'm up like 25% on that, and I'm just going to continue holding that. So overall, in general, I'm still long on gold, but just like everything else, gold has been incredibly volatile. And like I said, these are extreme market circumstances. We're in the middle of a 100-year crisis. So assets aren't, there's no playbook for this, and assets they're not acting predictably like we would expect. So I don't have all the answers. I'm not 100% right all the time. And I got stopped out on Bitcoin in March because it went way lower than I was expecting. So, like I said, when I see opportunities, either through Astro or to let you guys know on Twitter, and through these type of video tutorials and stuff like that. I'm gonna take one last question. If anybody has one last question, I will do one more question. At the two biggest astrology conferences here, NORWAC. NORWAC conference is all going to be all virtual now at the end of, so check out the NORWAC conference and the International Society for Astrological Research, ESAR. I'm also a featured speaker, and that hasn't been canceled yet. It's supposed to take place in Denver in September. So if you guys are interested in learning more astrology, come and check that out. They're going to have a lot of financial astrology there. ESAR is really famous for financial astrology, so come and check that out. The last question, when will cannabis be legalized in the USA? Sorry, man, I have no idea. I hope soon, because I think the drug wars are total bullshit. So I hope we can get cannabis legalized. It's legalized where I live, so hey, that's good, man. We definitely, anything we can use right now to take the edge off would be good. But all right, guys, that's what I got for you tonight, man. I just wanted to really connect with people. Thanks so much for following us, and now Cryptodamus is a real person here. And again, we'd love to talk with you, man. If you have any questions, you can always message us or email me if you want to do some wishes for everybody to stay safe and healthy out there. I'm in an infection hotspot myself. We're on total lockdown orders, and yeah, just stay safe and healthy. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family, and focus all our energy on staying healthy, not getting this virus, not getting sick. Apparently, it's even putting some young, healthy people in the hospital. So keep your immune system up. You can use immune tonic herbs, and we're going to get through this together, man. And we're going to try to make the most of the opportunities that are available financially here. So, all right, guys, thanks for coming to our first live stream video. I'm going to be putting out a written report that's going to look at the aspects going into 2022. So it's going to be called the Astrology of the Global Crisis. If you want to get that written report, it's going to be $25. We're taking pre-orders right now on the online store. And we'll probably make that report available to our Patreon subscribers as well, because we want to keep the Patreon group happy, and we're always giving them a lot of bonus information and stuff like that. So, okay, guys, be well, be safe, and we'll